Well, there's a lot to it, right? I mean, this is one was this wasn't where I was going to start, but yeah, I call it kind of the trifecta. It's about getting the media involved. It was about getting the courts, and then about legislation. And for a long time, well, relatively long time, last 5 years, we've been very successful at making the courts embarrass themselves, getting big stories out. And finally, I'm thrilled to see that there's some movement in legislation. I am super pumped for whatever it's worth to even hear the Conservative Party of Canada talking about this stuff and passing resolutions saying, hey, we're going to not allow minors under the age of 18 to do medical transitioning of any kind, whether it's the hormones, the puberty blockers, and especially the operations. But what people may not realize is that if you go back to the BC Liberal Party under Christy Clark, that's where Soji came into the BC school system, and it was through this policy that came out from the ARC Foundation, and Delta, British Columbia was where the pilot project came in, which is where my daughter went to school. And the signs were already there when she was in grade 4 and 5. At one point she was cutting her hair. She was watching, Handsome and Majestic, which was put out by TELUS, believe it or not. I mean, just nutty stuff. And 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 then my ex-wife was like, "Hey, we'll take our daughter to see this psychologist, the infamous Dr. IJ." And I'm thinking at that time, because I don't know any better. The courts, when I get to the courts, is when I find out the insanity of what was going on behind the scenes, because this was all hidden from parents. We weren't supposed to know. We saw bits and pieces putting things together, but we were putting things together the way they wanted us to put things together. And um, so I'm thinking, this is great, this Dr. IJ. But yeah, my daughter, he's going to see right through it. He's an expert, number one expert in British Columbia. Uh, what a great opportunity to get through this and be done with it. Because I thought, yes, my daughter has mental health issues, but not transgender health issues. There's no such thing as being transgender. A male and a female cannot swap sexes. It's
I
impossible.
agree. I
It's
agree.
absolute lunacy, and
Yeah.
it's the perversion that these kids are being told. Because I look at it like, okay, so my daughter has mental health issues, and what they're telling her is, well, why don't you just switch who you are? It's like these kids, they play these computer games, right? And there's these avatars you create in computer games. So you create your character. You can pick your eye color, your hair color, your skin color, your sex. And what these lunatics are selling to these kids is, hey, if you're not happy as a girl, just become a boy, recreate yourself. And then they put them on a pedestal and they feel really good about themselves for a period of time, and that's about it. And so I thought, okay, well, Dr. IJ, he's going to see right through this. No, he didn't. He pretty much pushed my daughter into the candy store and said, look at all the glitter, look at all the fancy stuff you can do. And as a result, there was an appointment scheduled for BC Children's Hospital in August of 2018. And again, according to their material, they said we're going to do a full-on psychiatric assessment before we do anything with your child. Well, my ex-wife calls me about an hour in and says, "Hey, CD, they're about to inject her with testosterone on the first meeting. Insane." And so I put a stop to it. And so they agreed to stop because they figured they could con me at some point, and they really tried. And so they give me this informed consent form, and so I'm reading through it, and it says the following changes will likely be permanent, even if testosterone is discontinued. It says lower voice pitch, increased growth of hair with thicker, coarser hair or arm, legs, chest, back, and abdomen, gradual growth of mustache, beard, hair loss at the temples and crown of the head, with the possibility of becoming completely bald. Genital changes may or may not be permanent if testosterone is stopped. These include clitoral growth, typically 1 to 3 centimeters, and vaginal dryness, and you go on to osteoporosis, all these different things. And then you get to the end of their consent form, and what does it say? The medical effects and safety of testosterone are not fully understood, and there may be long-term risks that are not yet known. This is in BC Children's Hospital's own material, that they have no clue what they're doing. And yet, and so I said no. And they tried to bring me into the hospital and with their social workers and all that to convince me otherwise. And I refused. I don't know all I need to know from this. And so I refused. And so in December of 2018, they sent me a letter and said, under the Infants Act of British Columbia, we don't need your consent as a parent anymore. You're useless to us. It doesn't matter, but we'll give you 2 weeks if you want to file in court. And that's what I did. And that's kind of where the public part of the story begins, because I did. I walked into provincial court and I filed against this stuff, and this has led to 5 years in court, which is possibly over, possibly not. And so you know, so I go into court, and the first ruling I get is from the BC Supreme Court, Judge Bogan, and he says, well, this is what I've been doing is family violence, all these horrible things, worst parent on the planet, and and then the Vancouver Sun and the National Post, I put out a front page story in the middle of January, and because what they attempted to do is put my daughter on a pedestal like they always do, but it wasn't working this time because all the comments were saying, "Hey, we don't like what's going on with these kids." It was kind of getting exposed, and so Barbara Finley is the lesbian lawyer that represented my daughter without my consent. They need parental consent to hire a lawyer, but not in this case. The judge said, "Oh no, we're ignoring you. Your daughter can have a lawyer." Insane. And then he comes up with this crazy ruling. And so after this ruling, I they he puts on a publication ban because Vancouver Sun, because of the comments, all of these cowards who are hiding behind the kids suddenly decide, well, it's not safe anymore to call them a transphobe. It's safer for us to hide, but we also need the courts to cover everything up. We don't want parents knowing what's going on, or this is going to be over, and they knew it. And so, hence the gag orders, the publication bans, and all the crazy circus that came after that. But so anyway, so the Federalist, I do an interview with the Federalist after that ruling, and I say I refuse to call my daughter a he, and all this stuff. Well, I was charged with family violence. I was in front of another Justice Mazzari about 2 weeks later, charged with family violence, and she was going to throw me in prison already at that time. But the lawyers for my daughter and all these other people said, well, let's not rush on this. And so they put me under a protection order where I could be arrested by the RCMP without even a warrant. They could just come and get me if they felt I had done something wrong and broken a gag order or any of these things. It was a crazy time. But I kept my mouth shut all the way through till the BC Court of Appeal, because we appealed this stuff in September of 2019. And I did not get a win, but I got something. And what they said was, okay, we're not going to go with the affirmation model anymore. You know, it's not just if the child says, hey, I want to transition, but it's on the shoulders of the doctor, not the courts. We're going to allow the Infants Act to hold. You know, it's mature minor BS, but we're going to allow the doctor to make that final decision. So what this has done is open up the door for all of these kids when this contagion finally comes to its conclusion to sue the crap out of these doctors because they can't say, oh, but the child wanted it. No, they've been hiding enough behind kids for too long. It's all they do. That's why they're under publication bans, because they're cowards. And it drives me nuts. And, you know, they play the suicide card. I have my daughter on record saying, Dr. IJ told me to say that. It's the biggest piece of lie that they're using. It's all they've got.
Well, yeah, they tell parents that, right? Would you rather have a dead daughter or a transgender son?
Oh, and it's so misleading, and it's
Yeah.
so dishonest. No, my daughter even told me, I have it on tape, that she was told to say that kind of stuff. So this is what they're doing. This is exactly what they're doing. And my daughter, she would sneak over to my house in that first year because she was told by Barbara Finley that if we're going to help you get your transition, you need to ignore you can't be seeing your dad anymore. So they bribed her essentially and said, it's either your transition and go after your dad, or if you show up and see your dad, we're not going to help you get your transition. And she picked transition. So it's just disgusting what they do on the other side.